Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us at the Partners Table podcast, where we interview elite leaders. This time around is going to be in the family office series, and we have the pleasure of having Dr. Greg McCann and Jesus Casado Navarro Rubio with us from Gen 6 or Generation 6. They are thought leaders in the family office space, so much so they have a book called Reshaping Reality, Unlocking the Potential of the Single Family Office, and both made dramatic and important contributions to that project. And we will kind of get into some of the details of that. But I want to welcome Greg and Jesus. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Pleasure being here.
Greg, maybe you can start out just sharing your book and what, the importance and who's involved.
Sure. We took over a year, Jim, and got 8 thought leaders and a writing consultant to say, what are some of the assumptions or what we call design flaws that are often baked into family offices? And then the book really addressed each chapter from these thought leaders, addressed at least one and often several of the design flaws. And then over the year-long process, we invited 15 people from the field that we thought were kind of a focus group that gave us a diverse series of perspectives. They read a draft of the entire book, flew to Ohio, and all of us got together for a day of feedback. Not only did we revise the chapters based on that feedback, but we also captured their voice in one of the chapters. I think it's a really provocative thought piece that took a lot of people a lot of time to put together.
As we think about the modern day family office and single family office especially, there's a lot of conversation around, what should a family office be doing as far as best practices? Is it more of a financial institution? Is it more than a financial institution? Helping to kind of create a framework today about what should a family office that is thinking about starting a family office and or an established one, how can they make some significant improvements to what they're doing? And so I have a couple questions here, and I just love to get your feedback. And starting with Jesus,
Right.
What reality about family offices needs to be reshaped today?
Yes, thank you, James. I think for me, the biggest misconception is that family office exists only to manage money, right? You said it very well. When really the real purpose is to help families manage themselves. I think the reality that most needs reshaping is the belief that family office primary job is preserving financial capital. Financial capital is important, of course, but in my experience, financial capital is rarely what destroys families. The real risks are usually human. Families lose continuity because they fail to develop future owners. They lose trust. They lose a shared sense of purpose. The purpose is one of the most important cohesion levers to gather the family around. So if you don't have a purpose, you become fragmented. I often meet families with amazing investment structures and sophisticated governance systems, but yet they are worried because the next generation is disengaged. The investments are healthy, but the family is not. So the future family office must expand its mission, right? Not away from financial capital, but beyond financial capital. And the family office should become like a place where more human capital, relational capital, intellectual capital, and stewardship should be developed together at the same time as investment portfolio. So, and I would just put an end to my intervention saying that money serves people, but people do not exist to serve money.
It's good.
Yeah, I might add that I think those are great points, Jesus. If you look, James, the family offices have grown by a third in the last 5 years. They're going to grow by another third. Some estimates put the money in family offices at approaching $5.5 trillion, exceeding private equity. I think on a global perspective, they have to be more than just trying to manage money, both for the families they serve, but also I think for society. It's just too big a source of wealth to ignore and not be good stewards of.
Typically, a family office is going from a world of accumulation. They're running a family-owned business in most cases. It does very well. They now structure a single family office. But how is it different? How is running a family office different from running a family business? And two, what do they need? What are the needs that they should be thinking about or putting in place for a family office that's different from running a family business?
Right. So when you run a family business, you have a clearly sense of direction. You create things, you build things, you can touch things. There is a material way of expressing the purpose of the family. At the same time, there is a very close connection of sense of pride of what you do and how you do. When there is a liquidity event and you manage wealth, that sense of pride, if you don't give them a transcended sense of purpose, another goal, might be loose, might be completely lost the connection with the family initial drive where they was creating things. So in that sense, the mindset when a family business is operating is completely different when a family office is created. And that's important because it requires a different type of leadership. But if you have that in mind, you can manage that, but you have to be aware of that. There is sometimes not enough financial expertise in the hands of those who have been operators in a family business, and they tend to hire it and just delegate everything. That's a big mistake because then there is no connection between those people who are managing your money to the real sense of why do we need the money for? Is there a sense of goal? Is this why are we looking for to do with the money after only just preservation of capital or growth in capital?
Nice. And James, I'd add to that. I think two words come to mind with that question of how's a family office different than a family business, and it's mindset and the business model. Imagine going on Shark Tank and saying, here's the model. We're going to have one client, the family, who's also our boss, who doesn't understand our industry and typically doesn't want to. And the only way to get more clients is birth or marriage. I don't think that's going to hit a grand slam on Shark Tank. And yet that's a family office model in many cases. And then the mindset, which I think Jesus alluded to, often what led to success in the family business, hard work, dedication, cohesion of the family around a purpose, pride in what you were doing. That cohesion isn't baked into most family offices and has to be cultivated. So it's very, very different. We have a wonderful chart in the book that compares the mindset of a typical family business that led to success and the family's mindset relative to a family office, which often leads to the opposite.
Yeah. So important. There is a distinction that they're not run the same exact way. And familiarity typically is probably the death to a family office because you're doing things the way you know how to do, but a family office requires a different structure and design. And that leads us into our next question, which is what are the most common design flaws families build into their family office without realizing it?
Right. Well, Greg just alluded one particular one, which is families often outsource this ownership, whereas what they should be developing ownership, right? So one of the most common mistakes is that when you create a family office after selling a business, you assume that the professionals will take care of everything. Everything means everything. They even giving a purpose to the money they are managing, right? When you are building in the business, you're deeply engaged. You develop that expertise. They challenge assumptions. You took ownership. But then some people, not I don't want to generalize, but some people, when they create a family office, they unintentionally outsource those same responsibilities, right? And I often see families becoming passive consumers rather than active owners. That's, for me, one of the most important design flaws. Another one is confusing service with development. The family office becomes extremely good at solving problems for family members, but that stops helping them develop the capability to solve problems themselves. Families who ask the family office to even call an Uber, right, or do things that they are becoming just incapable of taking their own responsibilities. So for me, that will be one of the most important ones.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think I'd add two more that come to mind. One is often hiring people with technical expertise, which is essential, but not hiring leaders. And so a lot of the work we do is helping those people become more effective leaders, which is at the top of any organization, what you need to do, and the complexity of running a family office with investments, cybersecurity, and family dynamics. And what we see, if you don't have that leadership training, what you often have is technical people trained in problem solving, overusing that gear. So they're advising families on divorces, on drug addiction, on all kind of things they should not be problem solving. So I think that's another almost baked into many family offices is thinking technical expertise is all you need in the staff.
And another one, if I may add, Greg, is that those technical expertise sometimes is focused on only very concrete profiles like lawyers, wealth advisors, accountants, and that's it, right? So there is no richness of other type of profiles as you can find in an operating company, and sometimes that reduces a little bit the ability of different people thinking out of the box and going to different directions, right?
James, just add a sentence or two to that. A client we had sold a business, and a year later he said, there's this conveyor belt of you have to set up trust, you have to get an investment advisor. And all those things are important. But he said, our family never sat down and said, what the heck is the money for? And do we want to be together? And that's generally not on the conveyor belt for many families.
Yeah. Again, another kind of great segue to the next question, which is, how can a family office distinguish between what the family asks for, their perception, and what the family truly needs?
Right. Yes, it's a very important question. So I think the leaders of the family office, being family or non-family, especially if they are non-family, they must learn to listen beneath the request. Sometimes they have a concrete mandate. Families often ask for structures. Structures will never solve emotional problems or family dynamic problems. What they actually need is clarity. They ask for governance, and what they often need is trust. They ask for succession planning, and what they often need is difficult conversations, right? A story came to mind when the family came asking to help designing a governance system. After a few conversations, it became clear governance was not the problem. The real issue was that there were 3 siblings that had never, ever developed trust with each other. So the governance structure was being asked to solve a relationship problem, but governance cannot do that. Right? So sometimes you have to go beyond what the mandate is. And a good family office learns to ask, what problem are we really trying to solve here? The technical answer is not always the right answer. So you need to go beyond.
And I think, Jim, it's a great question, because the family office is often trying to sort of please the family. And serving the family might be a better way to phrase that. So I think when we talked about the problem-solving gear, another skill is facilitating a discussion. So often helping a family see, is your behavior leading to what you want? Do you want us booking your Uber? Is that really something good for the family in the next generation? And so helping the family develop almost a coaching gear, if you would, versus a problem-solving gear, is something that we work with family offices to develop, and not one inherent in most technically trained people.
Would you say, is that the sweet spot of Generation 6 in terms of that really the key role is that coaching aspect of how to, create a purpose, how to get on board the right people to properly implement and run a family office that's thriving and not just surviving?
I would say it's part of it, obviously. So we focus a lot on leadership, agility, tools to help develop the right talent within the family office. But another one sweet spot is to reconnect the family with the staff of the family office. Sometimes when the family just is more and more disengaged, the staff gets the ownership of the mission of the family office, and this disengagement will jeopardize the future of a good succession planning, because the following generations will be completely disengaged, right? So I would say those 2 are the sweet spots. Yeah, correct.
I'm sorry, James.
No.
James, I'd say the sweet spot, I'd agree with Jesus. But I think, to use another somewhat dated metaphor, I think so many firms are trying to make the Blockbuster store more efficient. We're trying to help families transition to Netflix. So I think 2 things: the family cohesion, which is more baked into having a family business. We help the family, the trust, the cohesion, the relationships, as Jesus said. And then we help family offices to become better leaders, more capacity. So should you be problem solving? Should you be coaching? What gear should you be in? And more agility, the ability to pivot appropriately.
Can you share or expand on that a little bit in terms of when you say family office become better leaders, is that from a holistic sense as an entity, or are we talking about the leader of the family office, or both?
Really, everybody, most of the family offices we work with are larger, so they have a leadership team. But as we said earlier today on a call, Jesus and I, that unless you live in a cave alone, you're probably leading in some capacity. So everybody looking at leadership. And, the chapter in the book Jill Barber and I wrote that profiled the work we did with a staff of 21 family office people. We started with Jill, the president, The leadership team said, we want some of this. This is pretty interesting. The staff then asked for some of it. And then the client family asked for some of it. So I think it's a great role model to say, how do we show up better? I'm often inspired by the Gallup stat that said the number one reason people leave a job is a bad boss. And this is a way to be a better boss.
Nice. And what role should the family office play in preparing the rising generation for ownership, leadership, and stewardship?
Yeah. So that's a very good question, because some family offices think their only mission is to preserve wealth, so they don't manage the family as a whole. And for us, one of the main important goals of a family office is to prepare the family to be a multi-generational family, because family office is a business in itself, right? So you need to prepare families to focus on preparing stewards for the long term. Ownership is just a legal event, but stewardship is a developmental journey. It's more than that. So the family office should create opportunities for the next generation to learn not just finance, but decision-making, responsibility, governance, values, sense of purpose, connecting with their own desires. What is your mission in life? How do you see that? How does it connect with the mission of the family office? Impact is a word that is very much used today. So I often ask families, if your children inherited all your assets tomorrow, would they be ready? And they pause and they say, perhaps they're not. I mean, perhaps I've given them a lot of skills, even only financial skills, but it's not enough to really have a sense of long-term continuation of the family office. So most families start talking about technical knowledge, right? Legal aspects, financial aspects. But I ask a different question. So can you work together? Can you handle conflict? Can you make responsible decisions? Can you create a good governance structure? And finally, can you think beyond yourselves? What you really want? So that's what stewardship is like. It's much more than just creating an heir. Sorry, is to transcend only of inheriting part of the wealth.
James, it's a blessing and a curse, I think, to be the next gen in an ultra high net worth family, because it's incredibly hard to walk into a bar and say, I'm struggling with the $8 million check I get every year. Somebody buy me a beer. You probably won't get any takers on that. But I think for anybody in life, anybody in a family business, but especially any client family of a family office, you have to be credible to feel legitimate. And I think that's externally, people have to see you as legitimate, whatever role you're in, and then you have to feel it. And I think if you're getting a check for whatever it is, say 8 million a year, it's a little harder to put up with the bad boss or the tough teacher or those things that tend to forge our character. And so it's incredibly challenging as the next gen in a very wealthy family to develop credibility and know that you've developed it. Because the other side of you have people that can't say no to you, people that are willing to kind of overfunction for you and book your Uber app. So helping them develop credibility to me is sort of the North Star.
Yeah. And today, if I may add, sometimes when you are someone who is going to inherit wealth, there is a sense of guilt there. So we have to help them manage that emotion, because there is no guilt. There is responsibility with it, but no guilt. You've been blessed with a huge responsibility, but you don't have to feel guilty of having that. On the contrary, it's a blessing if you use it in the right way.
Something that we often hear is the patriarch or matriarch of the family. If we get down to brass tacks and we ask them the question about the transference of wealth and generational transferences, there tends to be just that hesitation or pause of, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if they're ready. I don't know if I can give them the ownership of.
Right.
It's so common.
Uh-huh.
You can almost anticipate it coming. How do you bridge that gap? How do you fix the issue of one generation to the next, where there is that sense of ownership and trust? And these are the soft skills. These are the things that most families tend to shy away from
Uh-huh.
and don't really end up dealing with, and it snowballs and it doesn't really fix itself.
Sometimes it all becomes when you as a dad treat your children as being infants, as being children, right? Sometimes you have to trust them. Sometimes you have to. There is a moment where when you have the feeling that your dad is not trusting you, that blocks your development, right? So I think that works very well in some clients we've had. Trust that your children are now capable. First, they have to show capability, and then they have to go perhaps outside the company and then show that they are valuable to gain legitimacy, to gain authority, and come back. But don't treat them as children, because then they will never step up.
James, my dad was a bit of a thought partner in the field with me. My mother wasn't. But the only thing, we have a family business and some wealth. She asked for a values letter about 15 years ago. And probably 60% of our clients say, what do you stand for and what will you not stand for? And often those are in the room when we have a meeting. So the tax issues aren't driving the decision, they're informing it. I'd say the other point, and teaching undergrads for many years, I think in 20 years of coaching and teaching undergrads, one parent wrote a job description or wrote expectations, but no parent ever did not edit whatever their kid wrote. So try to see if either side, the parent or the child, will write, what's the invitation here? Am I allowed to buy Ferraris? Do I not have to work? Do I get any money? Do I have to wait? I had one client that said, I feel like I own a Rembrandt. I'm allowed to go into a room once a year and look at, but I'm never allowed to do anything. So as Jesus alluded to, having the difficult, honest conversation age appropriately as early as possible and ongoing is really important.
Yeah, that's good.
Some of the work of Jay or James Hughes on this, The Cycle of the Gift, I think the book is brilliant.
Yeah, it's really good book.
That's good. Good recommendation as well. So we're going to go through a little bit more of a quicker rapid fire Q&A. And when does a family office become more than an administrative or investment office and become a platform for families flourishing?
I think it's when it develops people as intentionally as it develops portfolios. It connects with what Greg was saying about leadership, finding talent. So when you have a family office that becomes a platform for family flourishing is when it stops asking only, how are the assets performing? Are we performing better than, this other family office or this private bank? And starts asking, how are the people performing? And that change happens when the family office takes responsibility not only for making or managing financial capital, but for developing the human capital, relational capital, and stewardship. We come back with the definition of global definition from Hughes, right? That is not only financial capital, and financial capital should be a tool to enhance the rest of the capitals, right? So I would say that, just to sum up, flourishing for me means not simply protecting wealth, but to develop the capabilities needed to use that wealth wisely across generations.
James, I'd say a family office becomes more than just a money machine when the family's ready to go to the gym and do some heavy lifting.
And what would you say percentage-wise, statistically, how many opt for that?
Great question. I'll bet it parallels. I think, and my memory is not my strength, I think roughly 20% of the people have an ongoing workout regime. I would guess that parallels the percentage of families willing to do the work. But I think as you show them more and more of what their behavior is leading to, there's a growing movement, probably driven by the next gen in many cases, to want to do something different. But like I said, that conveyor belt is really strong of the financial side driving this.
What makes a family office leader truly effective beyond technical competence?
That's a good one. I would say when he's not only capable of managing portfolios or balance sheet, but that someone can also navigate family dynamics. Typical CEO of a family office might think that preserving capital or growing capital is their only mission, but they need to manage the family as well. They need to think about the next generation, how to engage those generations. So that needs curiosity, courage, and I would say system thinking.
I would say running a family office, leading a family office is incredibly complex. So great capacity, tremendous agility, strategic thinking, and the leadership to develop other people.
Something that comes to mind is lyrics in a quote, what is it to gain the whole world but lose your soul?
Right.
A lot of family office, I'm sure, struggles with the fact that they have the whole world from a monetary financial sense, but really struggle in terms of keeping the family unit intact and thriving in other important aspects of life. So hopefully today's session is really going to highlight that and bring some good solutions and ideas to the table.
Jesus, could I answer that one or address that?
Yeah, of course. Please do.
So I think one of the cutting edge issues in our field, and I was lucky enough to go to a retreat last March and going to a sort of a think tank follow up on that, is spiritual capital. What is the meaning of our family's blessing, our abundance beyond ourselves and our family? And I think that gets to the purpose, even if it's not religious, that is sort of the North Star. We've worked with so many family offices where they never even had that discussion. So I think I just read an article this weekend. One of the ways to flourish as a person, and I would agree as a family, is to have a purpose. And so I think you lose your soul. And nobody gets inspired by going to see their financial advisor and say, we beat the market by 2 basis points. I mean, that's nice, but to what end? Drucker's quote, and I'm paraphrasing, profit for a family office is like oxygen for a person. Both are necessary for life, but hardly a good reason for living.
That's great. What unconscious beliefs about wealth most often sabotage family offices?
Well, Greg just said it. I think the belief that if we preserve the money, everything else will be taken care of. So that belief that money solves everything, right? But the reality is that money cannot create trust. Money cannot resolve conflict. Money cannot create purpose and cannot create healthy relationships. So yeah, money is a powerful tool, but it's a very poor substitute of trust.
Yeah, that's good. How should family offices think about human capital, relational capital, and intellectual capital alongside financial capital?
Well, that's a typical definition from Hughes. So human capital is talent, character, judgment of the people. Relational capital is the trust and the quality of the relationships between them. Intellectual capital is the knowledge, the values, entrepreneurial mindset, and financial capital is the outcome of all that. It's not the source. So financial capital should be there to serve all those other capitals. Then we have a really balanced and purpose-driven family office.
James, I'm proud. Almost every chapter in the book, perhaps every one, addresses the different types of capital. And I think a running theme is the financial, as Jesus said, has to be in service of the others. If it's just about making more money, I'm not sure that's a noble purpose for any family.
We find families go more to a philanthropic model, if you will, to kind of fill that need. And is that enough to satisfy that purpose?
Well, that's part of the solution I've seen frequently. The thing is that more and more next generation are demanding that, right? So invested money is not enough. They need something else, right? They need to create impact. They need to have a deep purpose in the world. They have to align with the big causes, right? So philanthropy and foundation work and so on, which more and more tends to be part of some of the family office structure as one of the pillars, is one of the things that connect the next generation or the demands of the next generation to being more engaged with the family office. Yeah.
Jesus and James, I would agree. Philanthropy is a great way, if you're engaged, involved, great way to develop the next generation. But I think it's close to 30 to 40% of family offices are looking at direct investing. And one of the, I think, great chapters in the Reshaping Reality is Paul Carbone's, who worked for the Pritzker family, that said 2 things. The patient capital in a family office is a distinct advantage from private equity. And 2, investing in family businesses when you were a family business is a great way to get the next generation involved.
That's good. And if a family wanted to reshape its family office over the next 12 months, where should it begin?
I would ask them questions like, what are we trying to preserve? What kind of family do we want to become? And what type of skills, capabilities will future generations need to steward what we have built? What do they need to do to really pass it to the long term?
James, I have a client that sold, and they had a really successful family business that almost everybody worked in. Very, very credible, no entitlement. They said we have to commit to the family office the same way we committed to the family business.
Today, we're talking about why the modern family must become more than a wealth machine. Greg McCann, Jesus, we're really wrestling with the issue of it's not an or situation, right? It's having the capital, having the resources, but having the right approach, structure, foundation underneath the family office so that it's thriving, not just surviving. And this has been extremely fruitful time and conversation with two experts in the field of how to build and manage a family office. Greatly appreciate your time. I'm sure all those that are watching or hearing this podcast is going to be extremely pleased and enlightened with the insights that you provided to us today. Thank you so much for your time. We're really excited about locking arms with Generation 6 here at Zynergy and really giving some good thought leadership to those family offices that are struggling these days. So thank you so much for your time. Any last words of wisdom or thoughts that you like to share?
Greg, you start.
I would say the age of casual family offices is over.
I would say financial capital is not enough to keep the long-term preservation of a family company as a multi-generational family office.
And besides the amazing reshaping reality, unlocking the potential of the single family office, what would be your second choice as a resource to share with the audience?
Mine would be there's a peer group, Forge, that was started by Fidelity, but now it's run independently. And it's over 1,000 family office members and executives getting together as peers to talk about best practices, talk about innovation, and just to validate the challenges. So my experience from clients I have in that, they rave about it.
Great. Suze, you are in Europe. Maybe you can share something more appropriate or specific to that region of the world.
Yeah, it's global now, but it was mainly European. There is an association called Family Business Network where they gather more than 12,000 companies from across the world, especially European, but now they have as well US families. And they have subgroups like communities. And one of the communities is a family office community, really thriving. And they have great events, good peer networking. They have another community which is called Impact as well, for those who are, who want to really think ahead and do something. And that's really resonating with next generation. So, I will invite people to getting involved in Family Business Network International so they could get connected with that.
Great. If I'm not mistaken, are you part of that group? Is that something you're?
I am part of that group as part of the Spanish chapter in the FBN network. Yeah.
Great. Gentlemen, thank you again for your time. Much appreciated. Always a pleasure. Hopefully, you can do this again soon.
Of course. Whenever.
We love to share your thought leadership with our community and with your community as well.